right, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 15th order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place due to the outbreak of the coronavirus, this meeting of the Town of Berlin Select Board will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time. The Town of Berlin will use best efforts to post an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting on the town's webpage, the town's YouTube channel. Approved minutes will be posted to mytowngovernment.org. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to attend the virtual meeting may attend via the Zoom webinar platform in one of two ways, with both audio and video access or by telephone audio only. Should any board member have technical difficulties and or lose access to the meeting will recess for a period of time to see whether access can be restored. If not, the meeting will be continued to another date agreed to by a majority of the board or adjourned until our next scheduled meeting. You'd think I know that by heart.
I was going to say, Chris, you should just be able to recite that.
Oh, I doubt it. I don't know. But anyway, so we'll call the meeting to order at 7:03. We have approval of the December 28th open session meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion or comments, questions?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we'll take a vote. Keefe, aye.
Stone eye.
Hawkins, aye.
And that's unanimous. Margaret, do we have any correspondence this evening?
There is no correspondence for tonight.
Okay. We're on to general public comment.
Mary's shaking no.
Nope. All right, well,
Yeah.
do we want to start the general department update?
Yes, please.
All right, then we'll have to promote our police chief, Tom Galvin.
Hey.
How we doing?
Good.
Well,
All right.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too. It's got to be better than 2020.
Yes.
I shouldn't say 2020 was bad. 2020 was just different.
Well, different, and glad it's in the rear view.
Yeah, but we'll see.
I'm not tempting any fates.
Yeah, I forget what did I see. Something about what was I can't remember. Well, one of the movies about the future, and it was actually 2021. So I was like, uh-oh, we'll see what happens now. I can't remember.
There's probably a Simpsons episode. They're pretty good at predicting the future.
They're actually really good at predicting things.
Yeah.
But relatively quiet month again, which is kind of been a common theme throughout COVID. But just some old things that are still kicking around. Returned the grant paperwork, and I'm just waiting for signed copies from the state on the body cameras. We'll be able to look at making some purchases. And as we've talked about plenty of times, in December we wrapped up the shared streets and spaces program. But in terms of the police department for December, just under 750 incidents for the month. 16 motor vehicle crashes. Our crash numbers were definitely up. A lot of it was weather related. That December 5th storm, I believe within about a 2-hour period, we had like 7 crashes alone. One that hit a house. That was that Saturday midday kind of storm that hit us hard when everyone was kind of out. That has kind of been the toughest storm that we've had this year. Just how quickly conditions deteriorated on the road. Fortunately, DPW was able to rectify that relatively quickly, but we had a really tough 2-hour period. We had Coven Road closed with a pole down with a transformer on a car, and just some pretty nasty crashes in a short period of time. 2 actually rollover crashes, and then only 4 cases of criminal charges. And I'll talk about one of them in a minute. But just on those rollover crashes, where our numbers were up, one was December 10th, and that was really a reckless driving type of condition. Gentleman driving on West Street, went off the road, hit a fence, hit a pole, did some damage to some steps on someone's home, and they actually fled the scene. Fortunately, the officers did a great job in following up, and about an hour after the crash, just in continuing to check the area, they noticed a van that was kind of out of place. It had been driving around, and it was in a driveway on Boylston Road, where the officers, being from the area, are familiar with the vehicles that are usually in that driveway. It didn't fit, and it was actually people coming to pick up the operator of that vehicle. So we were able to solve that and get the necessary restitution, or it's going to be through the insurance process for the property owners that had damage. And then we were very lucky on December 15th. Had a young woman who was driving on South Street, and just a small section where we had some of the melt during the day got wet, black ice, it froze over, and she lost control and actually rolled down the embankment on South Street, kind of near Jones Road. And she became pinned in the vehicle. Her hair, actually, she had a ponytail that got pinned underneath the car. So they ended up cutting her hair off in order to get her out. But she was very lucky, just the way that the vehicle was damaged and her hair was outside of the vehicle. It could have been much more serious. She actually walked away and didn't go to the hospital. If you remember last month, I kind of told you about a crazy little incident we had at the mobile that kind of culminated at the mobile station with a subject running away from the ambulance, and we had to have a canine. Well, we ended up with another stolen vehicle related incident this on Christmas night, actually. Officers received a call from the Londonderry, New Hampshire Police Department about someone that had stolen a vehicle that they were able to identify and knew that they had a contact and an acquaintance here in Berlin, and that they may be heading to that address. And I guess looking at what happened, unfortunately, the officers located the vehicle, and with some assistance from Marlboro, Hudson, and Bolton, were able to take the subject into custody. He also had several outstanding default arrest warrants, so he actually was held for the entire holiday weekend. And while in custody, he actually clogged the toilet in one of the cells, caused it to overflow, flooding actually two of the cells, the entire booking area out into the Sally Port. We actually brought in it's actually a crime scene cleanup company, but they handle biohazard and things like that on Monday to actually clean the entire cell block and disinfect the area. But we also learned through this that this subject that we had in custody was the same person that we had in November. So actually in November, he had provided a fake identification that actually belonged to a friend of his that died of a heroin overdose. So we've been able to tie that case together, as well as some other cases together that this person has used with a fake ID, not only in Berlin, but in New Hampshire and other areas across Massachusetts. It was a tough incident. Again, and I explained this last month when we had transported this individual to the hospital. There's someone they're a person that is in some crisis, but they were released from the hospital to our custody. They went to court. They were released from the court. They've now committed additional crimes. While they were in our custody, were again transported to the hospital and again released from the hospital. And now they're actually being held through the court. So hopefully he's getting some of the help he needs with addiction and other mental health related issues. But again, I talked about the breakdown that we've seen with the system. And that once we're getting some of these people to the hospital that need help and are in crisis, and we're not getting that assistance from the hospital, so we're still trying to work that out. I've had some introductory conversations already with the incoming interim police chief that will be in Clinton. Lieutenant Brian Coyne is taking over from Mark Levenger. If any of you know Mark has been there, I think, since the beginning of time. He's been chief for over 30 years at this point, and he retires tomorrow. But in talking with Brian, he is very willing to begin to work to try and work on some of the grants that are available to get like a joint mental health clinician that actually would ride with officers. Probably we would have to expand beyond, I think, the borders of Clinton and Berlin, but include some of our other neighbors, and to have some of those people available to us immediately, and actually in the car some nights with our officers. So we're going to continue to work on that program and see what we can do to find some funding to do that. Some of our other neighbors have been able to do that, and it's one thing that I've been interested in for quite a while, but haven't had the support in our neighboring communities to kind of get that done. As I had talked about last month, just briefly, we did sell our last police interceptor. Kind of a bittersweet moment for the Crown Victoria to go, but we did make a little bit more money than we expected in selling that. Also, this past month, began the process for certification and accreditation. So in Massachusetts, we have a police accreditation program where police departments go through a voluntary review of policies, procedures, facility, equipment, and either initially become certified if they meet the necessary standards, and then can work towards accreditation. As we look at police reform, that has, it's been another hot topic, and actually the bill was finally signed last week, and we're still kind of going to see what that's going to mean for us. But these are things and this is something that we need to take on. We have a relatively extensive policy manual, but we need to put that up against everyone else's, make sure that we are living up to the best practices for policing, and that we're really managing our risk for the police department and for the town of Berlin. There's an annual fee associated with the accreditation process. It's an $1,800 fee yearly for an agency our size, but there are some reimbursements that would be available through Maya. And my thought process, as I have in my past life had some experience working in the accreditation process and starting the process when I worked in Wayland, that some of this initial review can be done without actually signing on to the program, and we can start to look at some things because there can potentially be some costly items, especially if there's issues with the facility and things that need to be changed. I think when you look at it, relatively speaking, we are in a modern facility and shouldn't run into too many major problems. And our equipment is relatively up to date, so we shouldn't run into a problem there either. But we can start to look at that before we actually officially sign on to the program and begin the process in that way. Also, in the last few weeks, I've started working with C3 Industries, the dispensary that will be is planning to go onto Banner Road. Part of the process is they need to go and undergo a security review with the local police department. So I've been working with Ankur on that. I don't expect it to be a very difficult process. Just in my beginning interactions with him and the information he's provided me, they're very experienced in this with the 5 dispensaries they've already opened in Michigan, and I think we're going to be able to work through this process as the rest of the permitting process works through the town. And lastly, I forgot to include it on here. Another relatively quiet month for animal control. We did actually have a dog bite last week, and I'm waiting to follow up with Helen. I'd actually placed a call to her today and haven't heard back, just to find out where we stand with that. It's not something we see very often, but just something we need to stay on top of and make sure all the reports were filed properly. Sometimes those dog bites and things like that, if the dog's identified, do result in a quarantine for the animal. So I just am following up with her to see where we stand on that.
So with the accreditation, Tom,
Yes.
Is there a process to go through the policies and procedures that you have and to update them?
Yeah. So there's actually a manual with standards that the policies need to meet. And what's nice is the Accreditation Commission has a series of training programs to establish an accreditation manager, and then to show you the ways to go through and then document what's in your policies and what's needed and what needs to change. So I started with the first class for myself, just as kind of a reintroduction to the process. And one thing that we'll have to do is, and it probably should be someone other than myself to actually be the accreditation manager, and then we'll work together through the process. So we'll look at that as we continue to move forward. But for that initial certification, there's 159 standards we have to meet. They're not all policy. Some of it has to do with just annual fire inspections, say in the cell block and things like that. But a lot of it is policy related. And I think what we're going to find is most of it, our policies already meet those standards. What we're going to have to look at is the standards are in process of changing right now, going from the 5th edition to the 6th edition. And also with the recently passed police reform bill, there are going to be some mandated policy changes. So it's actually probably a good time with those policy changes that are going to be required that we kind of work that in as part of the process.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for Tom?
I have five, but
Are-
I'll let Scott go first.
The money to help get us to accreditation, is there money in the fiscal year 21 budget for this?
Not specifically. And I think FY21 would be kind of the start of the process, looking and making some of the changes that we can do without actually paying for it. And then if we looked at it and we foresaw that it was advantageous to move into it in FY21, I think we could probably move some things around and make it happen. And there's also, and I have to check on it, I believe it's 50% or close to 50% reimbursement that would actually come from Maya as well. And they may actually even offer full cost coverage in the first couple of years. I said that way back when, 10 plus years ago, when I started at Whalen, Maya actually covered the first 2 years completely.
And then fiscal year 22, have you put money for this in the budget?
So as we move forward, so for the not next year, I didn't put it in for next year's budget. My thought was that FY23 is when we would start paying for it as we move forward.
Okay. Peg?
So Tom, you hit on a couple of the questions that I already had. So animal control, I know it's something that we've talked about every time you've been here for the past several months. The written reports from Helen, I know that she doesn't have access to a computer, but handwritten reports, I mean, anything that we can get from her that was part of her job description was to provide those monthly reports.
Yeah, and I didn't get those after we talked on the last meeting, and that's another reason why I had reached out to her today. We didn't connect, so I got to get her to come in and drop those off to me, and then I can scan them and email them to you so you can see them.
Okay.
Chief, if you could, I'd like to see the report on the dog bite, please. Make sure that, just to make sure that everything has been followed up on.
Yep.
And then
Absolutely.
Tom, you said the beginning, waiting for final paperwork for body camera grant. Is that the 17,000 or have you found more?
Yeah, no, that's a 17,000, and I think I know Meg's going to come in later on and talk, but I think I've actually found a vendor with a product that works very well, and they're willing to work within our parameters.
So any idea of a time frame ish when those could be purchased and on the street?
I would give it probably roughly 3 months or so in terms of finalizing the grant paperwork, looking at getting an order done, getting them in, getting a policy in place, and getting people trained and up to speed on.
And then
Go ahead, Scott.
just on those cameras, I think there should be a connection to the capital planning committee to make sure that replacement of them whenever their useful life is up is on the capital plan budget, because I assume this is not something we're going to do once and then stop. And since the grant was smaller, are we expecting at some point the town is going to buy more of these?
Actually, with the vendor that I've found and the product they have, we're going to only be getting a few less than I'd initially planned on, and I think it's going to work fine. So I don't think that we're going to need to buy more unless for some unforeseen circumstance we think we need to, or we learn that we need to buy them for each individual officer. That we're able to get enough for each full-time officer to be assigned one on their own, and then have a pool of spares for the part-timers.
Could you give us an update on what's going on with the 2 new hires from a couple months ago, Molly and?
So Dylan is
Dylan?
working. He's in field training.
Okay.
So he's close to, this is his third week of field training now. 4th week. Dylan is doing very well. Molly has had her physical. I actually finally got the results of that today and signed her up for the physical agility test, which is the next step in getting her signed up for the police academy. So tentatively, she will be doing, they offer the physical agility test. They do a preview day, which is like a practice day, where they bring you into the facility. They let you run through the obstacle course. So that would be on the 12th. And then she would actually be completing the test on the 15th. Once that is done, at that point, I would actually be able to enroll her in a police academy.
Nice.
So, yeah, as it stands right now, Randolph is very close to full at the end of February, and there's still quite a few slots available for the early April Academy in Boylston.
Good, 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 good.
Through the chair,
Um,
I'm working on the offer letter for Molly now. Dylan's was done quite a while ago, but I'm working on the offer letter for Molly now, and the agreement with respect to the academy.
Excellent.
Okay, good.
My favorite topic, Tom. Woo, woo. Train trash
Yeah,
pickup.
in terms of trash from the construction project, I believe they're done. I think the other items that they still have out there, I
Yep.
don't know what their plans are for those. Those are items that have been there for quite a long
Years.
time. Yeah.
Years.
So
Yeah.
I don't have an answer on, and I don't. My contact in my last discussion with him when I talked to Fitzy, I don't think he really knows what their plan is for them. It's nice if we could stick a free sign on all those railroad ties and people could come and take them and use them in their gardens.
Well, I guess my concern, I mean, are they ever at any point considered hazardous waste? Because aren't they soaked with what? Creosote or whatever it is, so they
Creosote.
don't, yeah. So
Yeah.
are they a hazardous waste to sit and just get rained on, snowed on, and seep into the ground?
I guess my answer would be I don't know. That's kind of
Yep.
outside of my purview, but I don't see it as much being very different than them laying along the grounds with the steel
I know.
tracks on top of them, and then the telephone poles in the side of the road.
All right. Well, if anyone's looking for metal, but I didn't say that. All right. And then well, you'd have to have a really long truck though to pick up those tracks. Be kind
Or
of
a
hard
torch.
to run down the road with them. I know that you and Margaret were working with the phones at the transfer station. Do you have any update on that?
So that's something that I worked with the Board of Health on. A product came in today, a kind of a docking station for that. In talking to Paul, Paul and I have been working on that. I don't really know what the problem is. I was there today with my phone on the same network, and it works fine. So what I'm doing is I'm going to transition it from the phone that it's on onto a smartphone now that I have the dock that will sit on the desk there,
Okay.
and see if that works. My plan actually was to talk to Paul tomorrow, and I need to get the other phone back to transition the data out of it in the SIM card and put it onto a smartphone that I have.
Is there a huge cost difference between a cell phone and a regular landline?
Well, so the landline that was there was part of a larger system that came into the town. So there was one bill that were paid. I don't know what it would be to sign up to get another landline. We moved all of the other town phones to an IP-based phone system several years ago. And we had a few hanging out there, and we're still paying a bill to Verizon. So just last week, we transitioned our fax machines to an eFax service. So now those were the last numbers to come off that bill, and that service will be canceled. I know that the Board of Health had done some exploration on their part in bringing the internet into the transfer station for a number of reasons that they were looking at. And I believe it was cost prohibitive, which would allow us to add a phone to our current system. But in terms of putting a new service down there and an individual service, I don't know what that would be.
Okay. Right. No, I appreciate that. I mean, I just know that there's, knock wood, there hasn't been anything that's ever gone on down there that would require, oh my God, and everyone usually has a phone in their pocket, but it will be that one time that everyone left the phone at home, it's dead. The phone isn't working in the little building and we need it. So, okay. All right. Those are my 5. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
Yep. No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks, Tom.
No
Thanks, Tom.
problem. I think and done in time to for our new rep and senator, right? Excellent.
I know.
Just about.
Great.
Okay, do we want to promote Senator-elect John Cronin, or are they in the audience?
Yeah.
Okay,
I am. How's everybody doing this evening?
good.
Doing well.
Hi,
Thank you
John.
for coming.
Hi, John.
Excellent. I just want to thank you for having me today, and just really want to take the opportunity to do nothing more than introduce myself. I know some of you I've met. Chief Galvin, I think I met you at 19 Carter 12 years ago prior to COVID.
Yeah, it was a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, in a different lifetime. And Selectman Hawkins, I think I met you at maybe a caucus, again, 10 years ago, pre-COVID
Yep.
and world. The rest of you, I'm really looking forward to getting to know and being your partner. I think in terms of legislative priorities, the next year is going to look a lot like the last year in terms of COVID is really going to be front and center. There's no more important thing that we need to do than identify and address unmet needs. And I really look forward to having a staff that's responsive to the needs in Berlin and being your partner as we kind of work through what's going to be a period in time where I think it's safe to say things are going to get better before they get worse. The light is at the end of the tunnel, but I think it's going to require diligent leadership to get there responsibly and take care of our community. So I look forward to joining you in that effort. In terms of legislation I plan to file in the next session, if any of you followed my campaign, we talked a lot about bills that are going to look at mental health parity, take a hard look at vocational tech admission standards, and also one thing I think we're going to try to do is build a coalition to try to get a veterans court and other diversion programs in our criminal justice system here in Worcester County, which I think we'll be able to do. And I'd like to leave you with two things. Really, I come here really excited about the team that won the delegation in North Central Massachusetts is kind of shaping up to be. I'm really excited to work with all of you, but I think especially Representative-elect Kilcoyne is really going to hit the ground running and is going to be a really good partner with my office. And I've also hired a great staff. So joining us tonight, and I don't think you can see them on the screen, but is my Chief of Staff, Kevin Bowe. And
Hi, Kevin. We've talked.
Okay, you talked. All right, good. And my District Director, Susan Templeton, who currently serves as a staff director for Harold Naughton. And so I'm really excited about the team we've assembled, where we're ready to go to work. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions you might have. But again, I want to thank you for the privilege of coming and introducing myself here tonight.
Well, I believe Margaret must have forwarded you the last email that we had sent to Senator Tran and to Harold Lawton. And some of the things that they had said they were going to file or work on for us.
So I can't say that I've seen that email specifically. I have been briefed by my Chief of Staff on the earmark for $100,000 for the tennis court renovation that, correct me if I'm wrong, but is currently in the 2020 bond bill.
That's
yes,
correct.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's something I plan on following up with as soon as I'm in the chamber. We get inaugurated on January 6th. Are there any other projects that you believe I should be paying close attention to at this point in time?
We could probably put together a list of several projects, but I mean, I'll mention a couple. We have a house called the Bullard House, which is in need of like a historical renovation. The Historical Commission is intending to use it as a historical museum. We also have a new town barn that we built, but unfortunately, in order to get it passed, we did not include the solar, which it was intended to have. And then we have a property called the Tolman property, which deserves a real cleanup. I don't know if you want to mention anything more than that, Peg or Scott.
I'll let Scott go first.
No, go ahead.
So Senator-elect Cronin, I know that we haven't had the opportunity to chat, but I'm wondering how you and your staff will get to know the needs of Berlin and go beyond, hey, we're going to have office hours, you come to us and talk to us, but more so, I want to reverse that. I want you and your staff, and I'm going to ask Representative Kilcoyne the same thing. I want you to come to us. So what is your plan to get to know the needs of the town, the residents in the town? You've got folks that have been here for 4,000 years. You've got families, you've got, elderly, you've got an awesome mix of people. in the town that all will tell you 15 different things that they need. So what's your plan to really touch our community to understand what it is that we need to that we need help from you on?
Yeah, I think there's no silver bullet, right? I think it's being visible. I think it's really working hard, and I think it's being in the community. There's no substitute for talking to 15 different people and getting 15 different opinions, but also developing working relationships with the people who are doing the work in town. It's relationships with the board here, with the different school committees that represent the schools your kids are going to. Those are key relationships that I plan on spending a lot of time developing. And the same goes with Chief Galvin and other public safety people in town. And it was easier to do, right? I met Chief Galvin, I think in February at 19 Carter. It was easier to do in a different world. But I can tell you, what I learned in the Army and what I think I take with me is where you are is who you are, right? And I intend to be on the ground as much as possible and developing relationships with the people who are doing the work on the ground. And so there's no secret formula, but it's spending time with the people who I need to talk to understand the priorities and the unmet needs in your community.
So Senator Tran and Representative Naughton were very good about pushing out, and actually Representative Trahan as well, pushing out monthly updates about what they're doing and how to contact them. I'm going to assume that your office will do the same, because what I was doing was taking those emails that I would receive and then pushing them out to the town so that the town knew what was going. So can we assume we'll have the same from you?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of legislation that's in Beacon Hill, and what you can count on my office for is a monthly newsletter with all official business, unaffiliated with our campaign or anything like that. But it'll detail the work we're doing in towns, how we're spending our time, legislation we're filing, and also give people notice of when and where we're going to be in the community in the coming month.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions?
May I interject? May I ask one or make a comment?
Yeah.
I just want to express my appreciation to you, to Kevin. He and I have talked, and I plan on continuing regular communications with him. And I'm very, very happy that Susan Templeton has stayed with you, because that means consistency for Berlin, and that's really important to the town. I also want to add something else. With respect to traffic concerns in town, I had a discussion with Kevin about this. With the development of the commercial enterprises on the boundaries, around the boundaries of the town, and the new River Bridge development, and just generally cars cutting through to avoid other congested areas, we are dealing with significant traffic increases. So especially we just recently had a shared streets and spaces pilot program, but a non-controversial kind of common comment that came out of that was the fact that we're dealing with really serious traffic issues in town. And so our traffic safety advisory committee is going to be meeting, and we'd like to try to schedule something in the not too distant future where our legislators, you'll be in place by then, where our legislators, representatives from MassDOT, and representatives from the town can all get together and talk about solutions to some of these problems that we're experiencing in town. So Kevin and I had a talk about that, and we're happy to keep you posted as we hear more on our end. MassDOT is going to have to be a key participant in all of this, given that Route 62 is one of the main areas of concern.
Absolutely. Great. Yeah. And I look forward to diving into that issue with you and my team.
Okay, great.
Great.
Good.
Hi, Meg.
Hi.
Hi, Meg.
Hope I got the time right. I tried to time it for 7:30 and then I was having some connectivity issues. So, but I'm really happy to be here
That's
tonight.
worked
With guys. 2 days before we were both sworn in, so this is the perfect way to kick things off. I don't know if you guys, I don't know if you wanted me to start by saying a few words or just kind of go right into a back and forth. For those that don't know me, my name is Meg Kilcoyne. I am representative-elect for the 12th Worcester District. I have the fortune of working with many of you guys already, as I've spent the last 10 years working for State Representative Harold Naughton as his legislative director. He is closing out his final term the next 2 days. So I am actually continuing to work as his legislative director in that time. So, you know, it's been it'll be quite, hopefully a seamless transition once we hit Wednesday. But I was, you know, so honored to be elected this past November to follow in his footsteps and be the representative for this district. It's, you know, this is certainly an interesting time, I think, for any of us to enter into politics. As you, I'm sure, are all aware, working in town government, we're dealing with an unprecedented crisis that is frankly continuing. You know, I feel much more hopeful than I probably could say during the campaign as we're continuing to see the vaccine rollout. But we're going to have to monitor that quite carefully going forward. In fact, just last week, I was helping Representative Naughton try to bring some more clarity and information on the vaccine rollout for first responders, both across the Commonwealth. So that includes fire department, law enforcement. We just didn't have information as to when or how they were going to be administered. I'm happy to report that thanks to Representative Naughton's efforts and the support of over 80 legislators, that the administration has released more information and details, and we should start to see vaccines be administered to local departments next week, which I think is great. So hopefully that'll continue, but this is such a big issue that's affecting both state and federal government that you know, I'm excited to dive right into it and continue working with Senator-elect Cronin, soon to be Senator Cronin, to make sure that, you know, we're continuing having this dialogue and communication. I mean, the way that we're going to know what's going on the ground is hearing from you guys. You know, like you were saying earlier, Margaret, that traffic issue. I'm so excited to begin working on that with you guys as well. I think, you know, we'll have to see, you know, specifically what solutions are needed, but I know in the past we've absolutely been able to make progress throughout the towns on things like that. And I think it's something that actually is impacting Berlin and other towns in our district. I heard that a lot throughout the campaign trail. You know, we've seen a lot of development in our region, which is a good thing, but that can have the impact of things like increased traffic, of reduced pedestrian walkways, of creating safety hazards. So it's something that we absolutely have to keep in mind to just make sure that people are still able to enjoy the same quality of life they always have, while managing and balancing development, you know, needs and concerns. And I apologize, I'm rambling. I haven't had to do these speeches in a while, but bottom line, you know, this is, I've spent the last 10 years working on these issues, working for these towns and these communities. So I'm really excited to, you know, step into that role and hopefully learn the tools and skills that I have to make sure that we're really having a seamless transition of strong representation for our region. You know, we're expecting the budget cycle to continue on the more traditional path. So as far as I know, we can anticipate, as many of you might know, that we saw this last budget got delayed. So the final budget was actually passed in November. We're expecting that to go back on sort of the normal cycle. So seeing the governor release his budget in January, getting an idea of where we stand on Chapter 70 funding and local funding. And the House is expected to be taking up that budget process late March and April. So, you know, I think we absolutely, you know, what I would ask of you guys, you know, keep us abreast of what funding needs are, if there's any deficiencies that we can address. You know, I know Representative Naughton has been really successful in bringing back vital funds to the district for not just, you know, education, but various projects that we need. And so I think that's a conversation I absolutely want to keep having, and it's always worth trying. So, I mean, like, for instance, safety issues, if we can get funding for, you know, a crosswalk or a sidewalk or a stoplight, any of those things, that's an opportunity there that we might have to try to help support the town's needs. Now, we still don't know what revenue projections are going to be for FY23. Sorry, I had to do the math in my head for a little bit.
Mhm.
But I think that what I would want you all to know, now that we're past the campaign cycle, without we're getting into this work, communication is key. And I think some of you have my cell phone number already. If you don't, I will absolutely put it in that chat. And just always feel free to call me. I just noticed Police Chief Galvin down there on the call as well. Good to see you again, Chief.
You too.
So yeah, anything that, I should be aware of, or Senator John Cronin should be aware of, that's kind of what it's all about. I mean, just to give you some insight with the vaccine issue I worked on last week, that was something that a firefighter in the district called our attention to, and it kind of just snowballed from there. And we found out it was an issue facing dozens, if not half the municipalities in the Commonwealth. And so it turned out that this one issue that was raised ended up being enough to kind of generate, enough pressure to really get results. And so we have to be focused on what our local needs are, but sometimes those local needs translate into statewide issues that can help a lot of people. So, we're going to be entering an interesting time, a new session, and it's going to, we're not going to really be able to take our foot off the gas, so to speak. So I'm just excited to be here, talk to you guys about, questions you have. And I probably have already talked too much, so I apologize. But I did want to make one quick note. I know Representative Naughton was here a couple weeks ago before Christmas, I think, to give you guys an update on two of the local bills that are currently we're trying to get through. Neither of those bills have moved past where he last, I think, updated you. The H5207, which is the bill the Governor Baker has filed for, I believe, the fire chief, is still in committee. It just had a hearing right before the new year. So we'll be trying to see if we can get sort of any last minute movement on that. If not, we'll be sure to make myself and the Senate to make sure that we get Governor Baker to refile that come the new year and hopefully fast track it along. And then H3935, which, let me just check my notes quickly, was I'm sorry, I think I might have missed. Oh, I'm sorry. No, this is an act validating actions taken at the annual town meeting. And that one is actually in Senate third reading, which was, I believe, the update that Representative Naughton gave you. So we're going to continue. Representative Naughton is going to continue to push for those. We're going to see a lot of movement in the next 48 hours. And if need be, we're going to put those right back on track to hopefully get a swift passage. So, and I'll continue, Margaret, updating you if there's any movement in those at the staff level. And then if not, or if they're not quite through the finish line, we'll go from there and, make sure that we try to get those done as quickly as possible.
So I'm hearing that we should be expecting or should have good communication between both the board and the town and our representative and Senate representative. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, and just I think I don't know if you guys if this has been if I've told you yet, but I will be hiring as my aide Josh Duhamel, who works on Representative Naughton's staff currently as his constituent director. So you might have had the pleasure of working with him before, but he's a really hard worker. He does a lot of our constituent work, so I'm really excited to have his experience and work and him be on my team, and so to have him there is going to be again great continuity, and again I think that's going to facilitate even better communication with myself and Senator-elect Cronin's office. So we'll hopefully be able to have a pretty small learning curve when come Wednesday when we get sworn in. So
yeah, that's good.
Great.
One of the items, Megan and John, you had tapped on it earlier where you talked about mental health. I received an email from a parent in town that is trying desperately to figure out what to do for the middle schoolers. That her specific quote was, her 6-year-old child doesn't understand COVID, he understands what Play-Doh is. And, there's, a lot of concern that the middle graders are kind of getting left behind as to what to do. And I know with COVID that there really isn't a lot to do. So, somewhere in the back of your minds, obviously don't need an answer tonight, is, what can we do, as a state, as a community, to take care of, of those little kids who don't understand that they can't see their friends. They can't, go hug their grandparents. They can't go out and play. It's just too stinking cold to go out and play
Yeah.
outside. But, very concerned about the mental health of the younger generation. Older people like us, we figure out a way and we get by. We work, we take care of our families. But little kids, they don't. They're kind of stuck. They're the forgotten population. So if there's anything that you could do that we can think of, to help this population, would be more than appreciated.
I would say keep telling us, sharing these stories with both myself and the senator, because
Yeah.
I think the last year we just were trying to focus on just surviving, right? Like
Yeah.
just getting funding, making sure, I mean, there were fears we're going to have to cut funding, and making sure
Right.
we were kind of keeping that level. And that's important. And I'm, that's something we had to do, but I think we're hopefully going to start turning a corner here, and we have to make sure that these kids aren't being left behind. My sister's a kindergarten teacher for Worcester Public Schools, actually, and she is all remote and has been for since March. And I've seen how she's teaching 6-year-old kids, and
Yeah.
sometimes some of them are in daycare and they just have one teacher watching them, and sometimes they'll just log off, and there's nothing she can do, or
Yeah.
these kids aren't getting the same social interaction they need. So I'm hoping that there's going to be, or if not, we'll start the conversation of what we're going to do to
Right.
give kids support even when we're back in school, because these are, as you said, Peg, these are kids that are missing a year, especially younger kids,
Yeah.
really important developmental years.
Correct.
So, I think we're going to see teachers are slated to be in one of the priority phases for vaccines. And so hopefully that might mean that we'll be able to see, at the very least, an increased hybrid model for
Mhm.
school districts. That's obviously going to be a decision between the districts and DESE. But I think we absolutely, to your point, need to make sure that we're not neglecting to just get back to normal. We're going to have to do some additional work here to try to catch up for this lost time that we have.
Yeah.
So I think what's helpful for us, hearing stories like that, obviously protecting confidentiality, or even if the people want to come to us directly, that helps us. We can give that to the chair of education, to the chair of children and families, and say,
Okay.
like, hey, this is important to our people, of our constituents, and that helps send that signal that
Okay.
this is a priority for everybody. So
Yeah.
that would
Yeah,
be my
no, Meg, I will. I'll scratch out all the parents' names and things like that, and you can see the line, and that just broke my heart. He doesn't understand COVID. He understands Play-Doh.
Yeah.
How do you
Ugh.
respond? And as an official of the town, you're like, I don't know what to do. Margaret, help me. I don't know what to do. And Margaret's like, well, I'll try. Help me. I don't know what to do. So it's a vicious
I would
circle
just say
that
what,
we're stuck in.
when we talk about mental health broadly, so much of our system is reactive, right? We have so many of our resources aligned after somebody's in a mental health crisis, and usually the point of entry is, in the back of a police cruiser, on the way to an emergency room. And I think broadly as a society, we need to take a more holistic view of mental health. And I had a conversation with the superintendent of schools in Lunenburg today. In that school system, they don't have a behavioral health treatment specialist or mental health counselor. They have one social worker that covers the entire school district. And so I think as a society and as a Commonwealth, and this is something I hope to work with Representative-elect Kilcoyne on, but we need to shift how we view mental health treatment to a reactive system, to a preventive system. And, to put a finger on your point, Peg, I think a really good place to start is making sure we have adequate resources for behavioral health treatment in our school system, and identifying kids who are at risk, or as we say in the Army, get left a bang.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And again, I know there's no easy answer, and I know that there's no quick answer, but probably the more of us that try to attack it from different angles, we're going to figure out something, not only to help the kids in Berlin, but to help all the surrounding towns as well.
I would imagine that there's going to be a lot of needs
Yeah.
for students in the next few years because of all the virtual learning and things that, you don't catch when you're not there in person. So, yeah, we need support for our students.
Yeah. And teachers too, I think. I know teachers
Yeah.
have been struggling a lot with this burden, and we've asked a lot of of parents, of students, of teachers over the last few months, and they've risen to the
Absolutely.
challenge. And we got to be there to once
Help 'em back.
we can. Yeah, exactly. So
Thank you. Look forward to working with you both.
Yes,
Same
Yes,
here.
thanks.
thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you.
Take care. We'll see you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice
oh
meeting
yeah, thank you
Thank you both.
guys.
You bet.
Thanks for coming. It was nice
Thank
chatting.
And like I said, Margaret, I can send you my contact information. We should be getting our official State House stuff soon, and we'll make sure that is distributed to all of you guys. And so just reach out anytime. And thank you for having me.
Will do.
Great.
Thanks, Meg. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thanks, guys. You too.
Happy New Year.
I think it might be a good idea to put together some of the important things
Yeah.
in writing and send it on
Mhm.
to John Cronin and Meg Kilcoyne.
Agreed.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay. Shall we move on to our town administrator report?
I always have to follow the tough acts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but Margaret, at least no one was, I know, but at least no one was like weepy eyed, last week with Dean and then the week before with Hank. So,
Right, right.
All right. Well, I'll be quick. Chris and Peg, I know you attended last week's Personnel Committee meeting, the December 30th meeting, where Sandy, the HR consultant, presented a final draft comp and class report that contained extensive data. That it's a very long report. I am gathering questions and comments from the Personnel Committee, and I'd appreciate questions and comments from board members too. If you have time to look through that report and you have any questions or comments, please get them to me, and then Sandy will be able to address them.
do you have a drop
So,
dead date, Margaret?
These are my questions on that report. I already have a whole page for them, so I'll write them
Yeah,
up and
you
send them.
go.
Good. Send them along. Send them along. We'll get them to Sandy.
There, is it in the Google Drive?
It's a spreadsheet.
report?
Come on.
I know,
It's,
that's right up your
I
alley.
did not upload it. I emailed it. I
Okay.
emailed it to you.
All right, I'll have to look for it.
Okay. All right. We received confirmation today that the Assabet Regional Housing Consortium is going to be meeting on January 12th. And I asked that our board chair and Tim Wheeler, who's been active for the planning board in these discussions, early discussions with Metro West, if they could be allowed to attend. And they said yes. So I'm sending that link. This is going to be the meeting where Berlin presents its, or the consortium takes up Berlin's petition to join the consortium. Once we hopefully get an affirmative on that and we're able to join effective FY22, we're going to have to start planning for a budget for that assessment for the consortium to be able to have those services provided. The COVID-19, I'm sure everyone knows now that the Federal CARES Act and municipal access to coronavirus relief funds has been extended for another year to the end of December 2021. But with the change in administration in Washington, change in Treasury Secretary, we do not know what the rules on coronavirus relief spending are going to be. So I have advised that we pause on our spending unless it's essential PPE or disinfecting supplies until we receive further clarification and guidance on the federal rules governing use of those funds. We don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we're spending money thinking that the expenditures will comply with the rules when, when in fact they may not. So we are going to just pause briefly, let the administration get in and let the Treasury Department provide the rules on that spending. I am going to be working with Cemetery Commissioner Barry Yeager on a request for quotes for cemetery maintenance contractor. This will be a short-term procurement through the remainder of FY21, so we can get through the spring of this year. And then responses to the RFQ are going to determine what the select boards or the town's next actions may have to be on a vendor contract. So the question will be whether the responses will require disclosures to be filed and the board to accept those disclosures of things of that nature. So I'll be working with Barry on that starting this week. The Peg just brought up the issue or the concern that she received from a Berlin resident regarding children during COVID and concerns with children during COVID. This actually triggered something that we do need to do with our school district, and that is execute a lease agreement. A lease agreement is referred to in the school district agreement. But a lease has not been executed. It wasn't executed when the agreement was approved. The regional agreement was approved by the member town. So that's something that we really should be working on and look to finish before the end of this fiscal year, because there are going to be long-term implications with respect to capital projects at the school and things like that. So that's something that we need to work on this spring. And that's about it for now.
Okay, questions or comments for Margaret? Two?
I have two.
All right.
And Margaret, it's kind of sort of in your response, maybe. The Sennies, where are we with the money that was owed to the town in November? Have they ever responded back with how they're going to pay that money that is owed to the town?
So it's in, I did include it here. They are expected to respond this week. They asked to respond the week of January 4th. So we are expecting a response from them this week as to what kind of payment plan we should expect.
Okay. And then it's probably more so a question for Dennis when he comes, galloping around on his loop to the board. Do we have any updates on all the taxes that are back owed to the town, whether it be people or commercial, where we are with that, if that number has decreased from when it was first presented to us?
Yes, there have been a couple of payments that have been made since Dennis presented. There was one, there is still one outstanding. It's a large commercial tax payment, and that has not been paid. And it's actually the hotel, it's Homewood Suites, that is still outstanding. But we have received the larger payments from Solomon Pond Mall, or from the businesses at Solomon Pond Mall, and from the large establishments at Highland Commons. So that said, Solomon Pond Mall still has an obligation under their development agreement to provide funding for open space annually. I think that's really, really winding down now. I don't know if we're on the last payment or the last one of two payments. But that actually is late. That's a $50,000 payment to the town that was due. A reminder has been sent, but the town has not received that payment yet. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's not a lot to say. I mean, it's, I mean, you can't get blood from a stone, you understand that, I'm sure that the mall, if you've been over there lately, it's, it's kind of like an echo chamber. There's quite a few businesses that aren't there. And even if you go up to Highland, there's still a bunch of buildings that are empty too. So I'm sure Dennis has all this under control. I was just curious because his initial list was rather long of, back owed taxes from folks in town or from businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll bug Dennis whenever he shows up at the next meeting.
And just so you're aware, on the on that mitigation payment, or the open space mitigation payment from Solomon Pond, that's not Dennis who's doing the invoicing. That's actually the accounting office who's been doing that. So
June.
Yeah.
Oh, look, and she's in the
But we're
audience
doing our
too.
due
I'm surprised
diligence.
that she just didn't like shut herself off. Okay. All right, cool. I'm done with Margaret questions.
Okay, Scott, you okay?
Yeah, I have some that I think are just better at the end of the meeting than at this point.
Okay. Then we'll move on to old business, and I had asked Margaret to talk about her priorities, the board objectives with the TA priorities and objectives.
Well, I didn't really know how else to tackle this, so I added 2 worksheets to Peg's Peg's workbook, and just showed asterisks where there is overlap. I guess what I could probably do is just, I don't know if you want me to list the items that are complete at this point, or just the items where there's overlap with the board's priorities and objectives. I have a list of about probably 15 or about 15, where the items have been completed on my list of priorities. And then there are several others that I've noted, I've taken different notes, and obviously a year of COVID has delayed completion on some of these things, but we continue to work in the background on them. So
It might make you feel
Yeah,
better
I was,
to go over the ones that you finished, but
just
well, I mean, I was
No.
surprised how much we've managed to get done despite COVID, because there's a lot of places
I know.
that really have done nothing but COVID for the last 10 months.
I feel like
I am most interested in the ones that, like, you think are doable but stuck and problematic, where potentially some conversation at the select board level or even some work on our parts could help unstick.
Well, let's see. Okay.
I mean, a lot of them look like, I was very impressed by how many both are done, but even those that aren't done, or some of them are on glide paths.
Yeah.
You know, the library septic, you were just waiting for the bids that are being opened, that's been redone.
And that's that's redone.
Right. The benefits and health insurance, is a lot of stuff has been done on.
There's another major procurement coming up, and that's the 23 Linden parking lot. And that's something that I have to get on very, very soon, because if we don't, we might run the risk of contractors booking other projects before they get to ours. And this is a project that we need to have done by the end of June. So I've had ongoing concerns about tackling that one. I don't really know how the board can help, except maybe if we could plan some sort of community meeting, maybe at the March coffee talk, we could talk to the public about their thoughts on the parking lot. I mean, we certainly want to try to have that $200,000 project be a project that satisfies everyone. And I'm going to be working on the procurement documents long before March, but the time crunch on that is a bit of a concern. The grant runs out at the end of June. There have been no extensions granted. And so that's something that we need to tackle. So if you're looking for concerns, that's one area of concern.
So will they really not extend the deadline?
They will not. They have made it clear they will not extend the, that was done through Housing Choice. It was a small town capital project, and they've made it clear they will not extend it. So that's something that we have to.
Then we need to get that done, right?
Yes, we need to get that done in between the other things. I don't know, maybe Scott, to your question, maybe I'd just ask the board, what priorities and objectives listed here, can we accomplish more efficiently together than separately?
Although you haven't assigned to fire as much as that the house numbering and visibility, us talking to our social circles, us talking to our neighbors, post some social media posts. I think this is a great time of year to really encourage everyone, at 5:30 in the evening to go out to the street. And how easy is it to see your house number through the snow and in the darkness? And if you can't quickly see your number, even knowing where it's at, is a great time to improve it. Make it bigger, make it brighter, make it a different color. So, and both sides of the mailbox, because I've noticed on some houses in my walks, I see it quite clearly taking the dog away from the community, and then I come walking back and like, oh boy, there's no house number on this side. I would have gone past whatever the house number was.
So, yeah, so maybe just kind of a communications push on the house numbering. I mean, the last we had, we had discussed this. I know the fire department was looking at, and the highway were looking at kind of taking the lead on this type of thing, but maybe this really is more a communication issue and getting people to recognize the importance of having, large house numbers, so public safety can find them.
I mean, and I know that some people have complained that the large, you know, bright colored numbers might look garish or ugly, but if it makes a 30-second difference in the EMS getting to your house when you're having a stroke, that can make the difference between something that is survivable without a permanent disability and having a permanent disability. And so it is definitely worth putting those large, bright numbers on both sides of your mailboxes and on your house and or condo or whatever is going to be. It's just so important. And again, darkness is where you don't see it, and so a great time when you don't have to stay up till 9:30 at night to see what it looks like in the dark.
So we
Is
need
a good time to go and look
push
at
on that.
Yeah, you can go in it. You can see it at 5.
4:25 is sunset. Yeah, I mean, I think
Yep.
that Ken and I don't know if it was Dave Litchfield or
Yep.
or Dave Smith. They were working on specifications. So Scott, it's a good point, Margaret. We can go down your list of communication types where we're going to hit as many people in town. Powder House News. I know it was on the Blinky sign. And just to push it. Because there's not a lot that you can do if you can provide. Hey, it needs to be X big by X big, posted, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, it's a individual responsibility. And I know that stuff has even been put out in the tax bills. So, but I think that we just keep hitting it. And 10 people do it, 20 people do it.
How about the article that you're putting together for the Clinton item too?
Yeah. We can put that in there, for next month. I wanted to leave off like this year with kind of like bright lights and all the fun stuff. But no, definitely that's a top one for next year. Can they find your house in the dark?
Yeah.
So, okay. So Margaret, we can kind of roll, I think between Scott and I and Chris, we can figure out a plan and kind of take that one off your plate.
That would be great. And I'm sure the fire chief can get his hands on some sort of
And Dave.
communication materials for the street numbering.
And then our plan for reworking of the goals and objectives, both for the town administrator and the select board, because I wonder are these synced up sort of time wise for renewal? Like the next select board election is in May, the fiscal year starts July. Whether or not, again, that sort of June timeframe is a good time to both for the town administrator and the select board to be setting our goals and objectives for that fiscal year, doing it at about the same time, so that we're sort of on the same page. And in some respects, Margaret, or the town administrator's goals and objectives being one of those things that helps orientate a new or even existing select board members to where you see some of the priorities are, I think would be just a good cyclical thing to get ourselves in the habit of doing.
I think that's a wonderful idea. Timeline, that's, the board can certainly determine that. This past year, it was in February that the TA's priorities and objectives were approved. I'm happy to my desire would be that we align them at the same time rather than at different times. It would make it flow, I think, a little easier.
Yep. Less likely for conflict where you think, your number. I don't think there's going to be conflict. I think it's just. I can't imagine where we're saying we should widen these 3 streets and yours says no, we should narrow these 3 streets or something. But
see, I see my responsibilities as carrying out your objectives too, operationally, right. And so we do need that alignment.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if you want to go over any of these at all, Margaret, or no?
Probably, if you want me just to talk about the ones that that I kind of noted some overlap.
Mhm.
First of all, River Bridge fiscal impact
Mhm.
studies, River Bridge development agreement review. That is ongoing. In fact, I reached out to the small working group we have that's been reviewing the development agreement for a meeting in March, so we can start picking it apart or continuing to pick it apart to see if there's any areas that the town might be
Mhm.
interested in modifications.
Mhm.
Then there was, let's see, ambulance billing. The board had noted that on the goals and objectives, and that's something that's also ongoing. We do have an administrative team. The chief noted this. The accountant, the chief, deputy chief, and I have been meeting. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow on updates on that. So that's another item that's ongoing and overlaps with the boards. The Tolman property brownfields assessment. So I am monitoring the CMRPC's work with DEP and EPA on the brownfields assessment, and hopefully we are going to be moving on to a phase 2 scope. And I know Chris mentioned the cleanup needed, and the board's goals address the tax taking status of that property and the Bonazzoli property as well. So there's going to be some overlap with that. My focus primarily has been on how do we get a resolution on these properties so the town does not take hazardous properties. So we want to try to alleviate that liability to the greatest extent possible. Then there was the goal about the town-owned facilities management and use, the inventory. That has been, I have not made much progress on this at all. And Scott, I know you are very interested in doing this, the inventory of town buildings. It's something that we absolutely need to do. And we could take a few different approaches on that. And I'd like to continue working on that. With respect to town facilities condition, I think that it might be in our best interest to potentially look at grant funding or other funding to actually take a look at kind of a holistic assessment of town-owned properties to see what their current condition is and what their needs are going to be moving forward. The
Well, and
school is actually,
I think some of those lists, because we put together the list to look at some of the buildings, I think some of it is which one of those do we not need anymore? Which ones are sort of albatrosses that we should find a way to not try to do new roofs and new foundations and new windows on, but either A, sell off to somewhere else or help demo so it can become an open land for other uses.
Right, yeah. That's going to be important to do along with the other items. We had asked at one point, we asked Mass Development if that's something that they could do for us. At that point, they were not able to, but since we're doing, this CMRPC is doing the Village Center study, maybe there's some way that we can incorporate that into that particular study, at least for the buildings that are right in the Village Center. The Maya risk management, we were, my intent was to seek grants that addressed OSHA compliance related issues. We ended up being awarded a grant that did a roof inspection and will put roof guards on the town office building roof, but it still addresses the grant seeking and administration. More buildings and facilities, deferred maintenance, energy efficiency measures. Yes, we got and my priorities and objectives noted highway barn. And so we've at least gotten to a first step on that with the Meta grant to look at the options for solar for that particular facility. And then to a couple of other things, the committee handbook, and thanks so much to the board for assisting with the development of the committee handbook. I will be wrapping that up this week, but that helps to address the priority on the priorities and objectives with respect to onboarding. new board and committee members. And so I think that's gone a long way to doing that. And then finally, the tax title properties, that was something else. And what I addressed in my list here, where there was overlap with the boards, was maybe there is potential for MVP grant funding, especially on the dam, that failing dam on one of those tax taking properties. If there's a way that we could get funding to resolve that particular issue, that would take away pretty much the main issue the town would have if it has to take that property. So I think that, are there more?
No,
That
those
last
are the
point might be,
ones.
again, that last point about repairs of dam might be one of those to share with our new representatives elect as they're looking at funding for the state, because we can't be alone in towns that have old dams on tax title property that
Mhm.
are potential taxes to be resolved, and what the state could do to help some of those out.
Mhm.
Right. I
Good
do think
point.
it's important that we put together some
List.
kind of comprehensive list just to put it on their radar.
No, that's a
So-
really good. Mary, is that something that you, through the chair, Mary, is that something you might be able to do? Just do an outline of all the issues that have been brought up tonight that the legislators should be notified of? If you could do like a summary of the items that were addressed tonight with the boards, in the board's discussion with the legislators?
Yeah, I'll watch the tape back.
Okay.
And
Okay.
there's, I mean, and Mary, there's a bunch that I wrote down too, is when Chris was like, oh, and. So if I could go back through my scribbling, I can send those to you. But it was definitely the ones that I caught was like the Bullet House, the town barn with the solar, the Tolman cleanup. So, I can go back if there's anything else that I could find to help you.
Yeah. I think those were the three that I mentioned.
Yeah. Margaret, just a quick question for you. I know that the energy folks, the two lovely gentlemen, are kind of like up and running and there's a meeting coming up. But when you look at my town government for Berlin and you look up boards and committees, energy is not listed.
So there are emails actually going back and forth between the chair and Eloise, I saw today. And so they're hopefully working out the details
Okay.
on getting the posting to my town government.
Cool.
They're meeting next week, by the way.
Yeah, the 12th, I think.
Yeah,
Oh,
and Kelly Brown, who is
Mhm.
our Green Communities regional coordinator, will be attending that meeting.
So pretty much if we kind of sort of work on ours that overlap with yours, I mean, that I think will definitely help with that. And I started an email while you were chatting, just so that I can finish it after the meeting, to go to Ken and all you guys and Dave Litchwell about numbering the houses. What do they have for specifications? So at least we can do that. And then I know that June is in the audience. She's like, oh my God, they mentioned my name. So June, maybe when you come for your meeting, that you can talk to us a little bit more about the ambulance collections and what you anticipate for what we may need to write off and where we are, just to get us up to date on that.
Yeah, an update of some kind, huh?
Yeah. I think that would be probably the biggest
The
one
fire
from
chief
her.
tends to update us. Fire chief tends to update us as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we weren't able to get to that this
Yeah.
week, but the intent for the chief is to come with a small amount of money that needs to be
Yep.
written off based on the old uncollectibles. So it's all about cleaning up all of those.
Right, which again will be an ongoing thing because we'll never do
Yeah.
100% collection. I mean, I think
Never.
if we get 60 or 70%, we'll probably be in great shape. And so we're still going to always write off 25 to
That's right.
30%, I'm sure, every year.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And there has to be an annual, at least an annual write-off by the board
Yep.
for things moving forward.
Yep.
Well, the nice thing is that there's a process in place now, and the people that need to be involved are involved, whether it's Chief Clark, whether it's Sharon McGowan, to help with all the reports from all the folks that go out and do that. And, June keeps an eye on it, and I'm sure that Amy's involved as well. So we've got a ton of eyes on it now, more so than I know since I've been around. So very appreciative of that.
That's right. So do we want to move on, or do we want to have more discussion?
I think we're
Good.
good. I think as long as we can keep our goals going, the ones that,
Yep.
that you and I and Scott came up with, Chris, and kind of keep them moving and then just keep blending them with Margaret. Both lists are going to go away shortly and we can replace with new shiny ones. I love new shiny things.
Well, either that or we could, focus on what we have, even
Yeah.
when we go to look at her goals, if it's in February or whenever.
Mhm.
I think we've got it's quite a list. I mean,
Correct.
it might be easier to focus on,
Mhm.
the most important ones
Yeah,
Agreed.
and adding to it.
Yep.
I like the fact that I whittled mine down by 16 this
Look
year.
at you. Show off.
I know it.
Despite,
I know.
and there's other ones that are heading out the door soon. So there you go.
You might want to list those ones that you accomplished in your TA report, so because it goes online.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you can. If you can. If you
Okay.
have time.
I'll do it. It's a feel-good thing.
It is. It is.
It
And I
is.
think people would be surprised. Oh, look, we've
Right.
accomplished that.
Yes. More to come.
Margaret, I'll give you a special shout out next month in the item. So, we can pick off a few of them that mean most to the town and get them in there.
Sure. So next month we can say that we've been admitted to the Assabet Regional Housing Consortium
Yes.
and cross that off the list.
That is
right?
correct. That is correct.
Okay. Well, why don't we move on to the subject of the single-use plastic bag ban?
Okay, the board has talked about this the last couple of meetings, and I believe that there was a consensus among the board members that in fairness to the businesses in town, especially in light of COVID, that there be some leniency in enforcement of the new bylaw. So what I'm recommending tonight, just to make it
Bless you.
formal,
Thank you.
is that the select board approve a one-time extension of the enforcement provisions of the bylaw to July 1, 2021. And this is going to give retailers sufficient time to actually prepare to comply with the bylaw requirements. And it's going to give the board time to designate the appropriate enforcing authorities under the non-criminal disposition bylaw. So that is my recommendation tonight.
I would make that motion, but I would also encourage Margaret to write up that paragraph and send it over to the item
Mhm.
and our current list of places to post it, because I think, again, it goes back to more publicity. We are doing things. I think it's the right thing. It's the right thing to have the ban. It's the right thing also to give businesses some better time for enforcement. I think it's a decent feel-good story all the way around.
Agreed. Oh, and if you're
Got
looking
that-
for a
got that,
second, Chris,
Peg?
yeah, I got it. Look. February items. So there you go. It's there.
Okay.
Mhm. And that's a second on Scott's motion, by the way.
Okay. If there's no more comments or questions, then we'll take a vote. Keith, aye.
Stone Eye.
Hawkins, aye.
And it's unanimous. And we have benefits consulting.
Yes, this is another thing that has been discussed at the board's meeting for the last few meetings. When we look at the contract that was executed with our benefits consultant, there are a number of items that need to be accomplished. There's a lot of investigation that needs to happen over the course of the next year. And including but not limited to drafting a multi-year benefits strategy to achieve program improvements, evaluating cost impacts of potential plan design changes or entry into various qualified health insurance groups, evaluating different cost sharing alternatives that our current provider, Maya, or other qualified established groups could offer. So there's, and in addition to that, I think it's extremely important in light of the contract that addresses the potential for retiree health benefits to have this actuarial baseline study done That's going to give us a number that shows the potential OPEB liability of the town so that we can all be educated on what the potential liability to the town is, not just for 1 year, but over time. And so that the IAC and the board and town meeting, frankly, would be able to make informed decisions on any changes moving forward. So I think that we need to be armed with information in order to proceed. So therefore, I recommend that rather than proceeding according to the July 1, 2021 implementation timeline on that statute acceptance, that the town continue gathering information needed to make fully informed decisions in the interest of the town and town employees based on the benefits consultant's findings.
So Margaret, this means.
I previously
Go ahead, Scott.
going to say just that I think this is the right direction. I've shared with Margaret earlier that after the last conversation, who used to be, I think, a big proponent trying to push this through for July 1 of this year, that I really was thinking that's no longer the sort of right course of action. I would like both to have us the time to do some both good due diligence, but I think also some time to allow the employees and the union representatives to work with the town to see if there is a good solution out there. I have some out of their ideas, social justice ideas that we could incorporate that we couldn't under the chapters that we adopted, where potentially people could pay a percentage of their salaries instead of a flat fee, so that those people earning more pay more towards their health insurance, and those earning less pay less towards it. They help get that social equity done, which again, we couldn't have done under the chapters that we had that we could look into. And so I am very much in favor of this. I like this, and I hope that it gets us a solution way better than we would have gotten had we sort of tried to push things through fast for this July, this town meeting.
Okay. Peg?
So Margaret, so basically July 1 of this year, it's still kind of weird to say 2021. We stay as is for benefits.
Yeah.
And then throughout this time, we start to look.
That would be the intent of this, is to not make any fast changes. But meanwhile, all through this spring, from now until June 30th and then beyond, there's going to have to be a lot of work done in the background to do our due diligence and to get all the information that we need and the employees need. So it's not a pause by any means. It's a let's keep working on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
mean, obviously, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say some of the ideas that you had, Scott, I think might be good to run by Jill from and Sue. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that we really need to take our time to do this right. And the inclusion of IAC and, carry on conversations with them to hear what they have to say too.
Because pretty much you can do it right or you can do it right now. Pick one, you can't do both. So which one do we want to do?
I've communicated this, my recommendation to the benefits consultant and the existing members of the IAC too. So just to keep everybody in the loop that this is what I was going to propose.
Okay. And would you like a vote on this, or?
I don't know if a vote is, I don't know. Well, you know what? Why don't you just, I'd appreciate a motion on my recommendation. How's that?
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
I so move to support the recommendation of the town administrator on a new timeline.
Agreed. Second.
Okay. We'll take a vote. Keefe, aye.
Stone, aye.
Hawkins, aye.
It's unanimous. And I guess we can move on to the FY22 budget.
Okay, I'll try to be succinct here. The good news is that the items, the line items that I am recommending the board's support on tonight, most of them did come with detailed backup, or the budget requests came with detailed backup. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at those. There are 2 lines, however, that I'm going to ask to hold on. On the moderator salary, that's one. I did put elected officials' salaries in for tonight, showing the 2%, but I have not heard back from the moderator on the proposed 2% increase. So I'm going to ask to hold on that tonight. On the other ones, on selectman salary, assessor salary, town clerk salary, and I believe Board of Health salary, I have calculated the 2% in those based on the Personnel Committee's recommendations, because those town officials have historically increased with those recommendations for COLA increases. So those are the wage lines. Do you have any question on the elected official wage lines at this point?
I would prefer the select board salaries not go up by 2%.
Okay.
How do you feel, Peg?
I'm okay with that too. You know, everybody has to do their part. And I think that we would be just a tad bit hypocritical if we told everybody else, no, you know, cut your budget, and we're like, woo, we get our increase. So I will back Scott that I'm good with the selectmen skipping their increase.
I do get that it's insignificant in a $15 million budget, but I think it's a perception. It's the setting the
Yes.
tone.
Agreed.
And I actually was thinking about that myself as I was looking through the FY22 budget information in the Google Drive.
Yep.
So I would agree with the 2 of you.
So that's going to be level. We'll just bypass that one. Okay, now for expense lines. I'm going to start with 145-5170. That's the treasurer collector incentive. In accordance with statute, a statute that the town adopted, I think probably more than a few years ago, if the treasurer collector receives certification from his or her association, there is a $1,000 incentive payment that is made annually by the town. And this year, FY21, Dennis did achieve that certification. That is something that actually should be funded in FY21, but it definitely needs to be budgeted for FY22.
Agree.
Now, under Dennis's expense lines, Dennis has submitted a budget request that is reduced by expense line is reduced by $8,944. That removes some of the funding that was deemed unnecessary for the benefits consultant and some other things as well. However, he is looking at a software transition from Point, which is that DOS-based software that the Treasurer Collector's Office has had for years and years. Very, very few municipalities are even using it anymore. He wants to do a conversion to Vadar, which would actually be tied more to the accountant system, which would help with their reconciliations and things. I talked with Dennis about these requests. He noted them at the bottom of his budget request. And asked him if he would be amenable to putting a special article on the warrant rather than incorporating these into the operating budget, because these are not recurring costs. These are going to be one-time conversion costs. And so rather than put it into the operating budget as your typical recurring cost, just reflect it in a special article as a one-time cost. I don't know what the town's history, what the town has historically done as far as these one-time costs, but you know, my experience has been that with these things, they're typically pulled out and put in a special article for funding since they are one time.
Is there any annual fees?
There will be annual fees that are incurred, but he's already paying those with points. So some of his operating budget that's already being paid to the current software would be paid to the new software. Right. So, but he was fine with doing this as a standalone. So if the board is supportive of doing it that way, and not bundling it into the operating budget. That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
And
The
what,
next,
what is he advertising?
I'm sorry, what is he advertising?
He's added 400, he went from 0 advertising in 2020 to $450 worth of advertising in 2022. What is the advertising that he is doing that he has not done historically?
Hold on.
I didn't see that in the backup, although one page is too blurry for me to read. So I could easily be on that.
To advertise, this is not under tax takings, but he does need to advertise tax delinquent properties that are late on their taxes. So I can't, I'd have to ask him. I apologize if it's not in this. I can't really explain exactly what other.
I don't have a giant problem with it because he has cuts in other places, and so it could be the advertising is taking place of something else in the budget. His total budget went down, even if you don't count for other things. So
could be, or maybe, yeah, and maybe it's just that he's shifted that sub, that sub amount to the advertising line properly. But I can check with him on that.
Yep.
Okay, next are election wages and registration wages. So election wages and registration part-time wages are all paid at minimum wage. So this is really a cut and dry line. It's based on a certain number of hours needed for election and registration work.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the part-time wages line for expenses. For elections and registration. Registration salary is a payment made to the town clerk for serving as a member of the Board of Registrars under Chapter 41, Section 19G. And that's where that $100 stipend comes from. That's a statutory stipend that's paid to the town clerk. The next one, plumbing and gas inspector wages and electrical inspector wages. While there has been some back and forth about the projected amount of permit fees, or the projected dollar amount of permit fees the inspectors would be getting in FY22 now that Riverbridge is done, there are other developments on the horizon, and the offset receipts directly pay the inspectors' wages. So my recommendation is to approve. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go finish. I think you're about to answer my question.
My recommendation is to actually fund the expense budget and include the offset receipts as the direct offset to these costs. The inspectors would only be paid for the actual permit costs that are incurred.
Right. So that these two numbers for plumbing and gas and electrical inspector wages are really offset by incomes, and so that those numbers might to some people look high, but it's because the town's bringing in that. If the town for some reason our electrical inspections did $1,500 next year, not $100,000 next year, his payment wouldn't be $100,000. His payment would be whatever the percentage we agree to for the $1,500. Now it's not going to be $1,500 because we have enough historical data, but that's the example.
Exactly. That is precisely.
And for my time on FinCom, you want to budget this high because when the town meeting passes a budget, this is as much for people listening, but if the town meeting passes a budget, we can't pay more than that. And so if electoral inspections came in at $200,000 in income, we couldn't pay him $200,000 because the town limited it to $100,000, and we'd actually have problems on our hands. So you actually want this number to be a little higher than you expect it to be.
Yeah. Yes. And it has been. So the plumbing and gas inspector did do his due diligence and did reduce his anticipated fees fairly significantly by $35,000 on the budget. But the electrical inspector with any solar projects and any other big projects still expects the 100,000.
You have 1.4 next to both police, public safety expenses and fire expenses. Are we skipping those?
No. Oh, did I? Oh, I'm sorry. I did. I accidentally skipped those. I had highlighted them too. All right. So police. Let's do
it's
police.
Spreadsheets. When we're on spreadsheets, I ask 1,000 questions.
I even skipped data systems. I have that here too. So that was from page 1. That's account 155, 5,700.
Yep.
Data systems. You did get all the detailed backup on that from the chief. That includes several different contracts. It includes our IT vendor contract with CM Geeks. It includes our town phone system. It includes all town internet. It includes our Gmail accounts. It includes our copier and printer leases and print management services agreement. It includes our website contract. It includes the setup of new computers, which we have started to actually do a 3-year lease. And at the end of that 3-year lease, we're buying out the computers. So we're actually going to be able to be on a PC replacement cycle. But there is a fee for setup of each of the new units at $300 a piece. The Dell leases are included here, and now a new eFax service, which we're transitioning from the copper wired faxes.
And
So all of this.
And to be clear, that the $85,000 line budget does not include any of the software used by the assessor's office or the accountant's office or the treasurer's office. That is all included in their own budgets as well, correct?
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. These are the town-wide systems that are in the data systems budget.
Margaret,
Okay.
is there ever an opportunity for the data systems? I mean, I know that we can all link up, through the Wi-Fi, but no one can print. So if I was to go down to the town offices for something and I needed to print, I'd have to kindly bang on your door, June's door, Mary's door. Is there any way that there can be access? I envision when we all start going back into the office, and instead of Mary printing out 85 different things for all of us, if there's just something that we need like a quick print of, that we could just sit at our laptop and go doink and walk into the room and get it. Is there any discussion on being able to print when you're in the building, unless you're hardwired in?
If you would like, Margaret, I can take some of this just since this is my job full-time away from the town.
You go right ahead, and then I'll give you my perspective.
Right, because there's a distinction between what is technologically possible and what we want to do from a policy standpoint. And so I can tell you it's technologically possible. We have actually set up at my office a lot of printers that if you're in the Chrome browser and your computer's on the same network as that Chrome browser, that you can actually print to certain printers within our facilities. And so that is technologically possible, and it's actually not super difficult to set up. And they're, depending on who you talk to, there's either zero security concerns about that or obscene security about that. I have been of the mindset that it is, the cost benefit is definitely worth it from what you get out of it versus the risks. But we'd have to have a talk with the town, because there's both cost for every piece of paper that's printed and how you control it so that someone resident in town doesn't just come off the street, unless that's a service we decide we want to offer, but just come off the street, go in with their Chrome browser on their personal laptop and start printing to our devices, causing town expenses.
Isn't there logins of some kind you can do?
We could do password protected something. So I'm guessing even virtually it could be secured, right, Scott?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't want to open it up to the town. I'm just saying, like, all the town employees, if you need something for a meeting that needed to be printed off or whatever, instead of, can you print?
Right.
That it's just like our laptops, and then, everybody down your end of the hall, Margaret, and then down the other side of the hall that would have access.
It's got to be town business too.
Correct.
Right. And sadly, or depending on your security stuff, for a great bit of it, that Google 4 days ago retired Google Cloud Printing, which allowed you to have a local server, so that I could, in theory, print to authorized printers from like remote places, where in theory Margaret could print things from her house, or Peg, you could print something from your house to the town printers. Right. That is significantly more difficult to pull off at this point, and we at my office haven't figured out a solution. We've also decided we don't have a need, that just that we'll do it in different ways.
So just a question, didn't know if that was that capability.
Thank you for answering that, Scott.
I
can talk about concerns with, paper being used for non-town purposes and blah, blah, blah. But
it's one of those things, if I could do it without it feeling like a select board member micromanaging something else, because I'd rather not. This is my area of expertise, is all of these contracts for computer replacements and phone systems and other pieces like that, and have very broadly talked to Chief Galvin about it before I was on the select board, but if there is a way to do that and provide some of those expertise without overstepping select board boundaries, I'd be willing to do that. I can also tell you, if I saw a major concern, if I thought you were going a major wrong direction, I would step in, but I've not seen anything that makes me think you've done anything but the right direction on both the phone systems and the fax server and the other stuff that you've gone.
And I have to credit Chief Galvin. He's much more technologically savvy than I am, and he's done a lot of this trying to consolidate our systems, getting us off, old fax machines. Really,
Yep.
this is a major step. 21st century. All right, so onward and upward. Police expense line. So the chief is looking to reduce his expense line by $2,346. And you talked to him a little earlier about the cost for accreditation. I think he feels that he could absorb some of this cost in his budget. But one of the reasons that he's able to level fund, and this is applicable to all of the big three, is the cost of petroleum, fuel products, gasoline, diesel. That has been very, very stable. It's uncertain where it's going to go next year, but there aren't signs at this point that those costs are going to skyrocket. So this, in large part, has allowed all three of these departments to maintain level funded or slightly reduced expense lines. So the chief's expenses, the things that he incurs in his expense line, there's going to be a lot of similarities between his expense line and the fire department's. He has the cell phone service for his officers that he pays for, the uniforms that the expense line pays for. They do their trainings and certifications. They pay for the ammunition, the weapons maintenance, specialized trainings for police officers, bulletproof vests, and they actually still do, for whatever reason, the Berlin's Police Department actually takes on the cost of the syringes disposal that's in the public safety lobby. Where I've been before, it's always been, fire EMS, but he pays for the disposal of the hazardous waste and things like that. He has dropped for FY22 a couple of services that the department had contracted for in prior years. First of all, public relations services, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not fully aware of what those services actually provided. If Chief was here, he'd be able to better explain. And then a firearms consulting service that they had previously done, and he doesn't feel the need to continue to do that. So that pretty much sums up the police department's expense lines. Are there any questions on that you need me to follow up on? No.
The box that they had putting, was it medication and syringes down in the lobby?
It is. It's that one. Yes, that's the disposal that the police.
I always thought that was someone came and took those things. I didn't know they had to pay to get rid of it. Yes,
it's the town pays to dispose of those materials. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. And then on to highway, same thing with petroleum products. And this for highway, this also applies to road patch and things of that nature. Anything that has petroleum is petroleum based. But Dave has done a reasonable job outlining the different areas of his expense line. You can see that truck maintenance alone represents $43,000 of his budget, his expense budget request. And then there are significant costs for line striping the streets, guardrails and bridge maintenance, contract tree removal. He calls them sky workers in his budget request. And then drainage supplies, gravel, stone, and things of that nature. So his total request Total highway expense request is level funded at last year's amount at $143,920. A couple of years ago, there was a significant increase in his expense line, but that was due in large part to the cost of petroleum products. So that bumped up everything in that line.
So do they have a service that does the lines on the road now?
They do. They have a contract. There's a contractor that comes in and does the line striping. Yeah.
Well, don't you remember though, Peg and Scott, when they used to do it themselves and the line kind of went like this?
Yes, yeah.
It's much more scientific now.
It gave the community character.
It was.
Margaret, in this budget, internet, phone, and TV, I thought you said under data systems, they pay for the townwide stuff for that. Why is there $3,300 of the highway budget for that?
I think that is because, I shouldn't have said the town-wide thing. I think it's because it's a different building. I think that's strictly the
Right,
reason. I can follow up. Let me follow up with Chief on that and find out why it's not captured in the data systems budget as opposed
And
to.
then cell phones, although they're allocated departments, we have one centralized contract for cell phones, right? We don't have every department negotiating their own rates and stuff, do we?
Different departments have different cell phone carriers. And that's something that we need to work on. And Peg, I know you've asked this question in the past. Highway department's cell phone contract actually happens to be a very, very reasonably priced cell phones under this contract. But inspections, fire, police, and highway all have different cell phone.
Because that has to be a support nightmare too, because if they're all with the same vendor and the same contracts, that just makes it easier to swap things between them and get replacement parts. And state rates should be the town can access state contract rates, correct? I mean, if I at work can access state contract rates, you think a town could?
Yes, yeah. It's something that we need to work on consolidating between all of the departments because I think it's a long-standing.
I guess I thought that Chief Galvin was sort of doing that for each department. No, huh?
No, but I don't think, I mean, and he probably wants to. This is something that has been long-standing with each of the departments, and we do have to get them on the same page. But
yeah.
If any of them under state contract rates, there's no penalty for early termination or moving around, and so there's not a friction. And so we should at least make whatever vendor they're with, that each one of them gets on the state contract rate, so that it's not difficult to merge them all into one at some point if there's a vendor we like. Now I say that at my office we have two vendors, but we also have 1,200 phones, and so I have two vendors so that I can play them against each other, and we can give someone the service that's best at their houses. Which the town probably has 20 or 30, and so that's not as practical.
Right. No, there is potential to align them all. I think there is potential cost savings with some of the departments. The needs of the different departments differ, but that's not something that's insurmountable. I think that we can address those needs, but yeah, that's something that we're going to have to work on consolidating the cell phone things. Any other contracts? Any other questions on highway?
So we've level funded them, but we've talked about the importance of taking out dangerous and hazardous trees. Isn't this the opportunity to put something in the fiscal year 22 budget if we wanted to do more with trees? Is that?
It could potentially be. The capital planning committee had approved prior to COVID, had approved $60,000 for contract tree removal to be able to tackle a large number of trees.
Okay.
This particular item that's in the budget only will do 10 days. 10 days, and so just a handful of trees as the need comes up.
And so this 15,000 is basically to keep us even with the number of trees that need to be taken down, and the capital number is to actually take care of the backlog.
That's right. This is to react to tree issues.
Okay. Thanks.
It's something that we can certainly still look at, and the capital planning committee is still talking about options with respect to dealing with all the hazard trees. Which, by the way, and I don't want to get too far off topic here because I know everybody wants to go home. So I did actually last year, Scott, I don't know if you followed any of this last year, but last year when the capital request of a bucket truck came up, we actually did a little bit of work with CMRPC and contacted surrounding towns to see if there was any potential for a regionalized purchase or shared purchase of a bucket where different towns could use them according to use the bucket according to a certain schedule. And this came up once we switched over the light fixtures to town-owned LED light fixtures. So it wasn't just about trees, it was about light fixtures as well. Most of the towns actually had either already had a bucket truck or had some other mechanism which they were using bucket truck services, whether it was through their municipal light department or what have you. But I reached, based on the capital planning committee's request from their last meeting, I reached out to the town of Clinton again today because they were a town that we actually continued discussing this with. And they actually are still potentially interested in the sharing of a bucket truck. So it could make sense. And they're especially interested, and as I think we might be a little more interested with the community compact is putting out a new regionalization and efficiency grant round. It's going to be opening on March 15th. And this is one of those projects, looking at something like this, that could definitely qualify under that particular grant program. So I told the administrator in Clinton today that we continue to look at that possibility. And I reached out to Dave to get his thoughts on it. And I'll report back to the capital planning committee. But in a big roundabout way, the issue of tree removal, we're looking at a bunch of different options.
Good.
Okay. So on to fire and EMS. There really wasn't a detail with the fire and EMS budget request on expenses. However, I pulled up detailed expenditure reports to try to get a sense of the largest pieces of this budget. Clearly, truck maintenance, gas and diesel, truck repairs and upgrades, uniforms for the department, office supplies are very common, memberships, training, the cell phone wireless service, ALS intercepts are a huge part of this particular expense budget. They do have some operations software, OCI software that they charge to the expense line. I'd already talked about equipment replacement. And I said office supplies and things. I think I've pretty much touched on the biggest chunks. ALS intercepts being one of the largest costs in this budget. So the chief has submitted a budget request that is level funded, which means that he anticipates that the ALS intercepts will remain, or the costs will remain fairly stable over the next year. This is something that we're going to have to watch closely because Patriot Ambulance Service is our primary ALS contractor. The town of Northborough recently went way, way, way up on their ALS intercept costs, and we are avoiding having them come in if and whenever it's possible to get Patriot here instead. So this expense line is level funded. Are there any questions on the fire and EMS expense line?
Margaret, I know that we had discussions on a potential chaser car ourselves, that we or taking one of the ambulances. We have personnel that is trained to administer whatever you need to administer. I mean, where is that discussion to either get a truck or put somebody in another ambulance and get them out to wherever they need to go to stop ALS from coming in?
So where we left off with this particular conversation was that the town needs to understand what the true ALS costs will be to the town. So the
Mhm.
town needs to understand whether or not it needs an ALS service, or whether it is more cost effective or more efficient to continue to run with ALS intercepts. The town needs to understand whether there's opportunities for a regional ALS program.
Mhm.
And also whether or not maybe a fly car option or
Right.
something like that would be an option. So where we left off was in the discussion on the special town meeting warrant, we were going to look for funding from public safety mitigation funds to fund an ALS consulting study
Right.
to determine what the need is in Berlin, what staffing costs would be over time to bump up the staffing, and what other options there would be as far as ALS. So needless to say, the special town meeting has been
Yeah.
delayed, but that
Okay.
still should be a first step in looking at ALS services in town. Okay. And lastly, lastly, we're going to be holding on Medicare, by the way. That was my last line. I'm going to ask that the board hold on that. Lastly is the library expense line. They too have requested a level funded expense line for FY22. Their costs include library materials, so books, periodicals, DVDs, children's materials, library supplies, some supplies for the copy machine, and general office supplies. The alarm system for that building, repair of their copy machine, postage that they may need, Spectrum, which is custom in the library's case, is custom to the library. Their contract actually pays for their CW Mars system, so they need to be on a separate Spectrum contract, which, by the way, Spectrum began billing for this past fiscal year. They had never been billed for that before, but they are now getting billed for it. So they are looking at level funding their expense line, and this is important with respect to the materials expenditure requirements that the libraries have, and the state aid that the libraries get. If the library is not disproportionately, the library's budget is not disproportionately reduced compared to other departments, they will not suffer any consequences on the state funding side. So they would not have to forfeit any of the state funding they receive on our cherry sheets. And I always pay close attention to this because we don't want them to have to suffer any kind of reductions in their state aid. So by level funding the other departments' expense lines, we are on a level playing field. So they should not be suffering any state aid losses. In fact, I would expect that the Mass Board of Library Trustees would do something like they did with the recession in I think it was in the 90s or the early 2000s, where they actually they didn't issue blanket waivers, but all libraries qualified for waivers if necessary in order to retain their state aid. So that's the libraries. Do you have any questions on the libraries expenditure line?
And how much state aid do we get for the libraries?
That one is about, oh gosh, I want to say I don't have the revenue sheet in front of me. I want to say it's about $4,000. It's a little over $4,000, I believe. I can double check that.
Okay.
I don't have the cherry sheet in front of me.
Just want to make sure we're not going through extraordinary measures to get like $20 from the state.
Yeah, I think it's a little over $4,000. I could be wrong. I'll double check and get that to you.
That's fine.
All right, and then finally, Medicare. I'm not going to ask the board to support a recommendation on this because we do need to hold for FY22 payroll adjustments in order to determine what the accurate Medicare costs or Medicaid costs, Medicare costs are going to be. in the coming fiscal year. So I'm gonna ask for a hold on that one. And
Well,
that's it.
kudos to you in June for getting all the other budgets that were not in. I mean, there's just really the rec expenses that are in review, and then of course
Yes.
the intergovernmental ones. But you know, hats off, Margaret and June and Amy and whoever else is on that whipping committee to get everyone's budget in. So thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so you would like a vote on these additional line items, correct?
Yes, please. And I have noted that the select board has asked for that salary line to be level funded. And I have noted that the Medicare line would be, is to be held. So, and the
And we're holding-
moderator salary
And
is
the
also-
moderator, yep.
The moderator, right?
Yep.
Okay, with
All
those
the others.
three changes, though, we would do we have a motion to support
I
Margaret's
do
recommendation?
so move. I move to support her recommendations for 1-4 minus those 3 changes.
Okay,
And that includes our selectman salary, Margaret, you got that one too?
Yep.
Yes, Scott's shaking yet. Okay,
Yeah.
then I second.
okay, we'll take a vote. Keith, aye.
Stone Eye.
Hawkins, aye.
Thank you. We're getting there. Next up, we do have to calculate the personnel committee's recommended COLAs before we plug in other numbers and other wage lines. So we'll work on that. Thank
Okay.
you.
Moving on to new business. Review of the draft Clinton item article.
Yeah, so there were, the one that's out there doesn't contain Chris's changes, but Chris's changes were very small. You know, of course, Peg put typos in there on purpose so that Chris would find
Yeah.
them.
And of course, Scott will not find them.
There you go, and Scott will not find them, and Peg has seen them 85 times, so she just glosses over them.
Well, you know, we all have our jobs, don't we?
Yep.
This is true, you know, and I appreciate that. So honestly, the changes were very, very minor that
Right.
Chris made.
But you have that copy somewhere, right?
I do, it's in an email, and I can, I'll include you guys on the, if we approve this, to get out to Jan. Question on the meals that were delivered, what is that final number? It went up, didn't it?
It did, I believe. I can only, unfortunately, I can only tell you the number of households. It was 85 households. I think.
Okay.
I think
Because
it
here it's 150, so you know what, I can
No,
just put the
it's-
little tilde in.
Yeah, it's about, I think it was more like 155 meals.
All right, so
And
I'll do like
maybe-
was-
approximately.
I thought it was more than that, Margaret.
I thought it was like
Maybe
185.
165.
No,
I thought it was 167 or something in that range.
Oh,
but
geez,
so-
okay.
But I think, Peg, if it just said more than 150,
Okay, all right.
Or
That
you-
we'll
works.
be, well,
Or
it
you
will
can
be safe.
Email Victoria.
Yeah,
She'll tell you right off the top of her head.
yep,
I'm sure they're still adding people to the list
Yeah.
today, so.
of course they are.
No, they're not, because here is done.
Yes, it was
Yeah.
done. Yes, it was a great
We're
event.
gonna
It was
hear.
wonderful. I'm so happy the town did it and she took a lead.
Yeah, but no, I wanted to kind of like close out our 2020 and you know, as I said, our rays of light, you know, and rays of hope, you know, and look at all the good things that have happened truly in just
Right.
a very short amount of time.
And I like it. I'd like us to also just consider as we go forward that some things just could be their own articles, that we don't need just one article per month about the town of
Yeah.
Berlin. And so if we could do other announcement things,
Yep.
that would be good. Again, like the plastic bag ban being postponed, could be its own little article.
Mhm.
And there could be others that come up that just are
Yeah.
better as sort of a standalone article than part of a town update.
Peg, on December 28th, there were 163 meals.
Oh, okay. All right, I will update and then include you all. Awesome.
And Scott, the library state aid for FY21 was $4,720. Thank you,
Thank
Jim.
you.
I said I was
Secret
going to guess
email.
that number. I knew it was 4,000 something.
Yeah, no, I agree with Scott. The more that we can push out, you know, either through the item or, you know, I know that Peter Hoffman has taken this and pushed it out through Berlin Connect, and I know that Mary posts it. You just to get it out to the town to show kind of like what's going on and what we're doing and what all the other departments are doing. It just speaks to the
There's a
town.
multitude of different ways that people
Correct.
get the communication. So
Yep.
good to touch on all of them as much as we can.
I mean, the EDC earlier today, they have an announcement they'd like to get out to businesses. And there's not a good email list of businesses to get things out there. And
Yeah.
if the town could do those, because every now and then when we do a rule change that affects businesses, to be able to send it out saying, hey, by the way, so that it's not just, the business that doesn't normally come to town meeting, which is a lot of them, especially the ones in the mall, don't get to hear about things 6 weeks out. Because I'm sure the business that bought 6 months worth of bags might not have bought 6 months worth of bag and it had been on the radar somehow. And we just didn't do a great job of getting that out there.
Right. Okay. Do you want to vote for this, Peg, or do you? I mean, I thought it looked fine except for the typos I corrected.
Yeah, and big red lettering, Chris. Thanks for that. Yeah,
Right.
as I said, it's minor, and I'll definitely include you guys on the shout out to Jan so she can get this in the item for Friday.
Okay.
Coolio, appreciate it.
All right. And we've got the Insurance Advisory Committee. The Fire Department's bargaining unit designee is David Litchwell.
Bargaining unit has an ability, or bargaining units have an ability to designate representatives from their unit to serve on the IAC. So I would just ask the board to ratify that designation.
Not a
So
problem.
moved.
And seconded.
Okay. Keith, aye.
Stone Eye.
Hawkins, aye.
There we go. And the Insurance Advisory Committee, the non-bargaining unit appointments.
And these are select board appointees. So the town, it's been 10 days. We have kind of a 10-day rule for notice and postings of vacancies. And it's been a little more than 10 days now since I sent notices to departments. We have, or the board has received 3 volunteer application forms from active employees. And there are 3 vacancies for active employees on the IAC. So first is June Poland. Next is Molly Reed. And then the last one is Richard Hanks. So all 3 submitted volunteer application forms, and my recommendation is that the board appoint these individuals, these employees, to the IAC.
So
Sounds
moved.
good to me. Second.
Okay, we'll take a vote. Keith, aye.
Stone Eye.
Hawkins, aye.
Thank you, and thanks to the individuals for stepping up.
Yes, this is great.
And
Thank you, June.
So how is a retiree representative? I mean, does it have to be someone, if they're retired, then would it be outside of the municipal government?
So it actually can be a retiree. There is a retiree board at the state level, and they can actually have a designee participate in discussions here. But we could also reach out to town retirees, even though they're not, even though we don't have retiree health insurance, we could reach out to our own town retirees and see if there's somebody that might want to sit on as a retiree representative.
So, I mean, I know we don't have retiree health insurance.
Right.
And Dennis, is he privy to anybody that he would know that, like a recent
I haven't asked him.
retiree or something from town government?
I haven't asked him. I can ask him if he has any thoughts or suggestions, just to get someone to the table. The IAC does have a quorum. So while we're searching for a retiree, we can proceed with meetings anyway.
Right. Okay. All right. We're down to board questions and comments. Did we take care of all the questions?
Margaret, the state asked land use boards to start meeting again.
Yes.
Have we, as our ZBA, have we found and helped the ZBA find a safe way to hold their meetings? Are they having meetings?
I actually talked with Lynn Ryan today. She's worked with town council and Leanne on setting up their meetings. They're going to be doing it remotely, and they're doing everything they can to accommodate individuals who might have technology challenges. So for example, they've provided a hard copy of a set of plans to an individual. But they are going to be conducting their hearing. They have an upcoming hearing. I can't remember when she said in the near future. It's going to be virtual.
It might be this week.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming up.
I think the state put them in an impossible spot. And so anything we can do as a team to help make them slightly less impossible, I wanted us to be doing.
Yeah.
And how about something out of left field here? At one point, when we were starting to talk about staffing the fire department, there was talk about working on the upstairs of Linden Street to start creating some sleeping spaces for them. As we continue to grow the staffing, and it looked like the fire department budget was continuing to increase the staffing, and I think their calls justify it. Are we looking at improving their spaces? And that's going to be a big capital need at some point, isn't it?
Well, that's a great question, because it's a question that was actually brought up at the capital planning committee. And so we looked a little bit into that. So the public safety, there was a capital request that came in to replace the public safety building's roof.
Right.
And when that question came up, one of the capital planning committee members asked, well, is replacing the roof going to cause disruption when the upper story of the public safety complex is built out for sleeping quarters? And so I asked that question of Chief, and he said, yes, he would hold off on the fire side or that part of the roof. But there wasn't a capital request that came in this year. So clearly it's still on the radar, and we're going to have to tackle that. But
because ultimately it's a multi-year thing, because at the first year you probably want to do a feasibility study, and then another year you want to do the architectural drawings, and then if it still looks like it's a good idea, then you start doing a one that actually might go to funding for it. So
I really felt as though that might have been one particular fire chief's idea.
it could be. It could be,
really
because there's ADA issues. Because are we going to need an elevator because you have to make any space ADA stuff? Well, there is sort of an elevator in the building, but
I
but
think
still,
that fire chief was gone. I don't think that it's even come up.
There are issues, and I'm going to be. I mean, in my prior experience, I've seen build outs like this, or requests for build outs like this, primarily with departments that do 24-hour shifts as opposed to 12-hour shifts. But then again, maybe a 24-hour shift is planned for the future. So, but the chief responded, and it's obviously still on, on the plate, on the targeted projects at some point. So, on the radar.
Sure. That was my list.
Okay. Peggy, you all set?
I'm all set. I've got all my questions answered.
Oh, okay. I got a couple real quick.
Yay, go Chris.
So have we got a bin for shredded materials, confidential materials?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We have two. We're with a new contractor that's charging 1/3 of the price of the former contractor. So yes, we have two large bins at the town. Well, one in the town office, one in public safety. Yep.
Okay, because I don't know. I mean, I have minutes from 2019, and I didn't know whether it'd be appropriate for me to bring those down and get rid of them there.
If they're town documents that need to be shred, they can go into the bin.
Yep. Okay.
That's the one next to the copier, right? That has a lock on it?
It's across the hall now, because it's just way too big to have in the copier room. So it's right across from Eloise's office with a lock on it.
Oh, okay, cool.
And tomorrow morning, Margaret, are we meeting with Superintendent Hooley from Assabet?
Tomorrow at noon, we're going to have a preliminary budget intro from Ernie and Chris from Assabet.
Is it at noon? Okay.
Noon.
For some reason,
it should be about half an hour. So after that, we might have a little sense of what's in store for Assabet.
And could you send me the link? Is there a link yet?
Oh, okay. Then I must not have sent the link out. Maybe it's still in my draft. I thought I did.
Oh, I didn't know if maybe he was sending it out.
No, it's still in my draft folder. Thank
Okay,
you for reminding me.
all right. Just wondered. And that was my questions.
All right.
Look at that,
That's it.
easy peasy.
Easy.
Woo-hoo.
So having no executive session scheduled for this evening, we could make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And seconded.
Okay, Key Fi.
Stone Eye.
Hawkins, aye.